Welcome back, everyone, for another video here on the Psych Ward. We're trying to keep the content train rolling, and I said I'd make a video of it because it got 100 votes on the poll. So today, we're gonna have the strongest redheads in fiction clash, and sadly, no, I'm not talking about Jean Grey. As the title suggests, today I'll be attempting to debunk a lot of the discourse around Gwen versus Eve, and for the record, I believe Eve should win, but Gwen does, objectively speaking, and I'll explain why I think that, along with the nuance needed to properly debunk this situation. Another thing I'll say is this video might not be as streamlined as my others, as the sheer amount of research needed was not something I could easily summarize, so bear with me. Beginning, as far as scaling decisions go, I'm leading with my first point here for a reason. Ben 10 is a children's cartoon, rated TV PG for parental guidance. I'm not dissing it or its premise. I grew up on it and will defend Ben 10 and his verse for being some of the strongest beings in literal fiction forever. But the world is constructed around a child-friendly vibe. That's the first nail in the coffin. Rarely do people die, nor is the level of destruction wide scale, and during their battles, with exception of a few major events such as Vilgax shattering one of the heads of Mount Rushmore or Alien X, we rarely ever see many outcomes where the stakes seem that high. That being said, the battles and abilities displayed aren't weaker per se, but there's too many, I feel, inconsistent theories of what Gwen is actually capable of. Like at some points in the series, Gwen can survive getting blown out of a building by a literal Techodon war machine, and survives the fall and bounce on asphalt, but breaks her legs falling down an elevator shaft when pushed by a random girl. The girl wasn't random, but...
Gwen!
Is she like a DBZ character who is suddenly defensive because they don't suspect the danger? No, because in both cases, that's bad writing. Even bringing up the durability of her shields isn't a good enough explanation, because it can stop any damage, most of the time. Some of the time, the majority of the time, still, Callus cares to shatter them, or there's instances where she even gets hit by Valvin's water jets, gets pushed into wooden crates, and knocked out. The consistency just isn't there. She can somehow take a direct hit from Pandora, a literal being made of atomic energy, but gets knocked out from bumping into a crate, and can break bones and has to go to the hospital for medical attention. I'm not here to question the feats themselves, but I'm here to be real and admit, as a Ben 10 fan, this is whack. A lot of Gwen's hype also, in my opinion, is because people don't understand her powers and over-speculate. That's because it's magic. Magic doesn't really explain how it works, fundamentally, but especially so in Ben 10. And as far as we know, magic's only costs one's mana, and it just does what it does. So while Gwen's feats are varied and huge, the distinct lack of continuity in what she can do is extremely irritating. In the original series, she had the charms of Bezel, but she destroyed them, and after the original series, all her more unique magic falls to the wayside. In her teenage years, she basically just throws pink energy at people, versus the massive suites of spells she had in her youth. So additionally, I don't see why that should be factored into a death battle, cause bad writing should be just as accounted for in scaling as the rest of continuity. And yes, I know Omniverse Gwen regains a lot of her original kit, but I hate Omniverse, so yeah, you can yell about it in the comments. People also claim scaling feats about Gwen that aren't really even from her, but her connection to What If or whatever screen time she gets. For example, oh, Grandma Verdona can do X things, so Gwen can also do them. False. Grandma Verdona is far older and more experienced than Gwen and has lived perhaps more than one lifetime. The only thing suggesting Gwen is capable of the same thing is their literal relation. Or, next example, Ben can fight insert villain as Humongosaur, and Gwen, who can restrain Humongosaur, must be around that same villain's level. And no, that's just cap, because, good example, Vilgax is literally a multi-world conqueror. That's not how feats work. Gwen casually loses to fodder level foes at times, like when her and Kevin were losing a 2v1 against Serpent until Ben easily pulled up, saved them, and honestly just like shit talked them for being that bad. Or, once again, how she just gets knocked out several times without much effort from low level enemies she usually bodies like common henchmen. There's also the constant talk about how Gwen's a reality warper. And for instance, again, not because she has displayed this, but because her grandmother can reset a damaged clearing where once again, this isn't explained. Gwen has shown no inherent mastery of these abilities to scale it as a feat. Eve, on the other hand, even outside of her final form, can literally warp landscapes, turning arid deserts into lush vineyards, reconstruct buildings, and change her own energy constructs into different material, even being able to manipulate the literal oxygen in the air and atoms. So, even though Gwen is also a black belt in karate or taekwondo or whatever, I did a video on it and don't remember, I still don't think that's enough to give her the edge to defeat Adam Eve in hand-to-hand combat. Eve has shown, even in her early days and first few days of her powers, that she can adapt to 1v1s against other enhanced humans, later giant opponents, and even massive groups. Now, I could say that that's the writer backseating Gwen because she does have her epic moments for sure, but the worlds of Invincible and Ben 10 aren't the same type of world. The dynamic just isn't there. The stakes aren't the same as the heroes who live in Invincible, who have to deal with worldwide threats almost every day, 24/7, to the point it's hard to live a normal life like going to high school or college and not just fending off enemies during summer vacation and in their hometown. Now, in terms of their actual powers, I can see Eve and Gwen's similarities, but once again, I think that's a double case of bad writing. Both these characters can control the literal elements, manipulate their environment, and have scores of other applications of their power, but are reduced to red-headed girl who throws pink energy. And in my honest opinion, Eve's constructs feel a little more versatile to me in her uses, such as armor, walls that she transmutes from hard light into other constructs, shields, jets, propulsion to fly. But this also doesn't show that vastly different of capability than Gwen. But Eve was doing this in her child and teenage years, and as I said, Gwen conveniently rarely uses the spells of her youth, so kit-wise, Kid Eve is taking it. Though, again, admittingly, Gwen's base projectiles do have varied levels of strength that, despite them usually getting knocked away by most foes, her projections have been shown to be able to cut buildings and various different things directly in half, with relative ease. And she can even empower her strikes to do more damage, shown in her battle with Sunder, and that's not technically like armor, more of like just smashing someone with an energy shield, but it works. So, while I can admit Gwen similarly uses her powers in a variety of ways, it's the facts of science behind Eve's powers and how that translates and is not open-ended for my support. By the rules of most of creation, she can manipulate her surroundings, aka matter, wherever she is. While mana is not something that exists in other universes, I will admit Gwen is also made of mana as nanodite, so she should have unlimited energy, even though the show never actually says that. And even then, the robot that was trying to kidnap Verdona years ago said she'd only power his planet for like a few years, not for eternity, so maybe Gwen isn't infinite, who knows? Now, the biggest area of contest here for me is durability, because as I said earlier, Gwen might just have it from the sheer amount of material behind her versus Eve. Gwen's taken blows from pretty heavy hitters, even though I mentioned earlier she broke her leg falling down an elevator. I'd still class Gwen's durability way higher than Eve's. She's taken shots from Way Big, one of Ben's strongest aliens, Restrained Humongousaur, one of Ben at the time's go-to close combat aliens, and though of course that too is inconsistent as strength doesn't always mean overall matchup favor, Eve's durability basically tops off around and ends with fighting Viltrumites or other Viltrumite scaled characters. And speaking Invincible for a second, I will say one of the biggest flaws in most Invincible scaling is when they say Mark, Nolan, and Thaddeus destroyed planet Viltrum. What most people fail to add there is that Space Racer shot a fucking ray gun at the planet that is said to be able to penetrate anything and be unstoppable to basically weaken the planet's core for them to be able to do that. So it was technically still a four-man job outside of Viltrumites, and it doesn't directly even prove that they're planetary level, but Invincible ran aside. How about we go ahead and talk about final forms? One of my biggest issues with Gwen's ultimate form is that she states it to be so powerful and it is strong enough to end the hybrid invasion, and strong enough to be Dagon's Eldritch God vessel. But as I noticed, most of the YouTubers like to leave out is that she's still vulnerable and how she technically got killed by her signature villain, Charmcaster. In this moment, Charmcaster offed Ben, Kevin, and even Gwen after she went into her ultimate Anodyte form, with all of Gwen's feats said to be speed of light reactions, infinite mana, and reality warping ability. It all meant nothing. The only thing that saved her was plot and Charmcaster realistically feeling bad after talking to a ghost. Now, could Eve have survived a similar encounter in her ultimate form against Charmcaster? I don't know, getting your soul ripped out might just top anything regeneration can do, but technically, as long as she's left with a physical body, she can come back. And given how she directly displayed the power to remake people, even their consciousness, personalities, and minds, I'd say it's a given that she can somehow still win this, but who knows, maybe Eve can actually defeat a souped up Charmcaster. But on the issue of who wins in their ultimate forms, on paper, I'm saying Eve, but as I've stated, conceptually, Gwen is more powerful. Her writing leaves open ends about her limits, so while we know Eve's limits in terms of her power and fear and literal mental blocks, Gwen's worst thing is that she just wants to be a normal girl and can be swayed by her own personal emotions in these situations. Can she beat Vilgax? It's never been showcased, but she's got the feats for it. Can she warp reality? Sure, because there's nothing that said that she can't, even though she realistically hasn't. Holding a portal open is not warping reality, but that said, she can resist comically destructive amounts of damage, open portals to other dimensions, teleport, and even project her consciousness onto other people and objects as advanced as the Omnitrix, which in case she did go in and threaten to blow up and destroy all of the ultimate forms, but it's a hard pill to swallow. Adam Eve loses. No matter how good the fight would be, Gwen could simply teleport Eve into space or the Null Void, or even invade her mind, which as far as I know, she hasn't had to deal with thus far in Invincible canon, and not in a significant way at least. I will say, in my opinion, the main reason I hold the personal belief Eve would win this fight is simply that she was designed from birth to be the ultimate weapon, and would be omnipotent, said so in the show, without her mental blocks. The literal word explanation of her powers literally just says it. She's omnipotent. Eve should be able to split atoms, create potential unheard of elements, transmute life and death, and countless other things in between that would probably break your mind. A literal invincible version of Dr. Manhattan. And I just can't accept that any feat shown by Gwen truly scales to like the sheer awe of that. But like I said, if we compare them on an unbiased front, Eve loses, Gwen wins. And that's the video, guys. A different one than usual, but you let me know. Maybe you like this more scattered way of speaking. Gwen won the poll, so maybe there's just things I'm missing. Let me know down in the comments. Let me know what I got wrong. I tried my best here, but either way, guys, thanks for watching another video here at the Psych Ward. Thank you to my patrons and everyone who continues to interact with my content. And if you made it this far, remember, thank you, you're cool, and stay safe and stay sane.